The stench of scorched dignity still clung to Auction Block 9. Lord Varnix of the Growlex Dominion, once a high lord of commerce and human procurement, adjusted his monocular ocular lens and stepped onto the smooth marble tiles of what used to be the galaxy's most profitable slave exchange. There were still scorch marks on the walls from when the rebels stormed it, but now it smelled like fried starch, meat grease. Above him, neon lights blinked with unapologetic vulgarity. "Welcome to Galactic, home of the Double Terror Burger." A cheerful jingle echoed through the plaza as an upbeat human teen voice rang out. "Would you like to supersize your shame today, Varnix?" He flinched. The kiosk AI recognized returning customers, and by customers, it meant former tyrants. Varnix adjusted his shimmering cloak in a futile attempt to shield his pride. There, on the very same podium where he once sold 6 humans to the ambassador of Drechthal for housework and entertainment, now stood a smiling teenager in a ridiculous visor, asking if he wanted a side of onion rings. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when humans were seen as low-tier sapients, cute in their defiance, tragic in their idealism, and utterly ripe for exploitation. When the Growlex first discovered Earth, their analysts had laughed. A primitive death world filled with soft-bodied bipeds who poisoned themselves with something called deep-fried cheese and considered jumping out of planes for fun or vacation. Primitive, they said. But oh, how quickly things had changed. Not through war, not through rebellion, but through spreadsheets, economic domination, patented sources and branding guides. The humans hadn't overthrown their galactic masters with guns, they outcompeted them, and Varnix had watched it happen in real time. 5 solar cycles. Earlier. The markets had begun to shift, quietly. First, it was the collapse of Growlex-owned labor contracts. Human slaves, cheap, yes, but they started organizing. Whisper networks, coordinated slowdowns, passive resistance, and then something weird. Suddenly, humans started asking for paychecks. At first, this was a joke. Varnix himself had once laughed on the floor of the Trade Senate when a human representative walked in with a PowerPoint presentation and explained minimum wage with an adorable little stick figure chart. But the humans weren't joking. They began offering services instead of submission, not just food and sanitation, culture, entertainment, psychology, finance, things the Growlex had never bothered developing beyond their own rigid hierarchy. They didn't need therapy. They had subordinates to scream at. Then came the restaurants. It started as a novelty. Earth cuisine booths at interstellar ports. Tourists loved it. Spicy, dangerous, deep-fried, served with attitude. And then, those booths turned into franchises, then conglomerates, then full-on planetary corporations with stock options, benefits, and HR departments staffed with humans who could stare down a Growlex warlord and tell them, with a straight face, "We're not yelling, we're just disappointed." Somewhere along the way, the humans became employers. Varnix stood now in the drive-thru line. Yes, there was still a drive-thru, no vehicle, just foot traffic from nobles, warlords, and once feared slavers waiting in orderly queues. Behind the counter, a teenage human in an apron flipped patties while chewing gum and chatting on a headset. His name tag said, Josh. Josh was the most terrifying thing Varnix had ever encountered. It was humiliating. It was excruciating. It was efficient. Varnix glanced around the plaza. There was a Jagathi overlord at table 4, nervously wiping ketchup off his ceremonial robes. A Rixian general apologized to a human assistant manager for forgetting the proper hand-washing protocol. And the worst part? They liked it. They liked the order, the structure, the benefits, dental plans, casual Fridays, birthday coupons, even performance-based bonuses. The human economic empire didn't enslave. It hired, and that was more insidious than any whip. Back in the headquarters orbiting Earth, the Galactic Board of Directors reviewed the quarterly report. Franchise expansion into the former slaver colonies is exceeding projections, said Marcus Flynn, CEO and former field medic from the rebellion days. Projected Q6 revenue is up 230%, we're converting Auction Block 10 into a retro-themed milkshake bar." There were a few chuckles around the table. Flynn looked out the viewport at Earth, glowing against the stars. They didn't want vengeance. They wanted legacy, and legacy came with branding. "Next item," Flynn continued, flipping the digital tablet. "Hiring quotas. Remember, we're not just flipping burgers, we're flipping power structures, with a side of fries." Growlex Prime had once been the hub of the Quadrant's most prestigious slave auction circuits. Its towers, obsidian and gold, had pierced the dusty sky like declarations of arrogance. But now they had drive-thrus and soft jazz playing from ceiling speakers. Inside what used to be the grand concourse of chains, a venue where not long ago humans were traded like livestock, customers now argued about sauce packets. "No, I said 3 Sriracha Galaxy dips, not 2, snapped a Braven noble with 3 mandibles and a dripping milkshake mustache. "Sir," replied the unimpressed human cashier without lifting her eyes from the register, "it's literally in your bag. Maybe try using your good mandible to count next time." That cashier was Mia Tran, and she didn't care if the customer once had a private moon. She had rent due, a roommate who ate her snacks, and a black belt in customer service indifference. Mia was part of a growing generation born after the rebellion, kids who never knew what it meant to live under alien whips, but who now walked through their ancestral trauma with a headset, a spatula, and a 10-minute break every 4 hours. And weirdly enough, they were winning. In the Human Diplomatic and Economic Embassy, colloquially called the Burger Embassy, built in what used to be the palace of Overseer Shan, Ambassador Keon Davis paced in his usual loop between the soda dispenser and the complaints department. "Let me get this straight," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "The Growlex Union is filing an official complaint because a teenage fry cook told a grand marshal to touch grass." "Yes, sir," replied his assistant, flicking through a tablet. "Apparently he also told him to get ratioed, which we're still translating." Keon sighed. "Just send them a coupon booklet. Make sure there's at least one buy one get one free Baconator combo in there. That usually calms them." This was diplomacy now. Gone were the days of trench warfare and planetary sieges. Now, humanity conducted war with promotional emails and seasonal discount menus. And the galaxy? The galaxy kept biting. Meanwhile, in the training chamber of Galactic University, yes, it existed, new recruits stood in perfect formation, wearing red aprons and paper hats. At the front of the room, an old man with grizzled grey stubble and a flame tattoo on his forearm barked out instructions. "Welcome to Fry School," he growled. "You're not just flipping starch sticks, you're representing the might of Earth's economic dominance." The recruits blinked nervously. Most weren't human. A former Rixil whipmaster now trembled before the fryer. A siren enforcer tried to balance a tray of Happy Meals with trembling claws. They had once enforced labor camps. Now they begged not to burn the nuggets. "You will smile," the instructor snarled. "You will upsell the combo. And if I hear one complaint about shift scheduling, I will deep fry your ego and serve it with ranch." The aliens nodded in terrified unison. Back at corporate HQ, Marcus Flynn reviewed the Galactic Labor Adjustment Graph, GLAG for short. Humanity's economic expansion had grown so aggressively that major interstellar currencies were pegged to the value of the Choco Nova Sundae. Economists in 4-star systems referred to it as the dessert standard. A human burger chain had become the backbone of galactic finance. And the secret? They didn't just export food. They exported expectations, fair pay, lunch breaks, customer satisfaction ratings, a purpose. For thousands of species that once measured worth by domination, this was heresy. But for the younger generations growing up under Earth's corporate umbrella, it felt right. Dignity, apparently, was contagious. On the planet Biscan, once the site of a massive human mining colony turned slave camp, a new flagship store opened. It had a jungle gym, for the kids, of all species. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Keon Davis stood in front of the press while a 6-armed alien child in a burger costume danced nearby. "We know what happened here," Keon said. "We haven't forgotten, and we're not here for revenge. We're here to flip this place, literally and metaphorically." Laughter from the crowd. "And for the record," he added, "our ice cream machines actually work." The crowd cheered. Somewhere in that crowd, Lord Varnix stood silently in the back, flipping through the onboarding materials for a new managerial role. He didn't understand half of it, but for the first time in his long, privileged life, he was earning something. The former High Warlord of the Krizari Empire now stood in a walk-in freezer, holding a sack of curly fries. To be fair, it was a promotion. "I once commanded armadas," he muttered under his breath. "And now," replied a human shift supervisor named Jojo, chewing bubblegum with divine indifference, "you'll command the sauces. That's the ranch, that's the barbecue, and that's the stuff that burns if you're too slow." Lord General Kriskar blinked both his vertical eye stalks, looked down at the plastic gloves now adorning his once armored talons, and nodded solemnly. "Yes, Commander." "That's shift lead," Jojo corrected. Elsewhere, far from the grease-slick tiles of reclaimed food courts, a summit of planetary leaders convened on the neutral moon of Overith. They had not come to discuss warfare. They had come to discuss a phenomenon that made them sweat more than plasma torpedoes ever did: human franchising. Representatives from 20 former slaver species sat in a dimly lit council chamber, squinting at a hologram of Earth's latest quarterly expansion report. "Another 5,000 stores in 1 quarter, hissed Councillor Zelv, her tentacles tightening into knots. "At this rate, they'll have a store on every habitable planet by next cycle." "They're spreading like cultural bacteria," growled a Chela diplomat. "They've infected even our language. My children ask for snack breaks and wear Earth hoodies." "What do we do?" asked a shriveled former lord of the Raktul dynasty. "We tried oppression. That didn't work. We tried embargoes. They just bartered with memes." Silence. Then came the voice of Grand Administrator Kren, a wiry alien with bags under each of his 7 eyes. "We have to join them." The room exploded. "Impossible. Unthinkable. Unethical." But Kren raised a claw. "They've reprogrammed the very concept of value. It's not resources they trade, it's dignity. And somehow, fries." Back on Earth, now the interstellar capital of franchise training and customer conflict resolution, CEO Rosa Castillo adjusted her tie in front of the mirror. She didn't wear a suit because it looked good. She wore it because the galaxy was watching. At 28, Rosa had grown up in a refugee tent after her grandparents escaped a labor moon. Now she ran the most powerful corporate entity in known space, and she knew exactly what she was doing. At her desk, a report flickered on. 15 former planetary governments have requested fast-track franchise licensing. 2 are offering orbital stations as collateral. 1 just offered a goat. Rosa grinned. "Send them the starter kit, and add the training module on emotional labor." Inside the Human Cultural Heritage Museum, formerly a gladiatorial pit, schoolchildren from multiple species now stared at exhibits of human rebellion, innovation, and hilariously bad fast food commercials from the 2020s. "Miss Ilara?" asked a small Crick student, pointing to a photo of a human holding a protest sign that read, "No justice, no fries." "What does this mean?" The teacher smiled. "That, my dear, was the moment everything changed. The humans stopped asking for rights and started charging extra for sauce packets." "But how did they win?" the child asked. Ilara paused. "They made value itself, human." In a flagship Freedom Fries outlet on the planet Thernex, a commotion erupted. An irate customer, a retired warlord with a diamond-encrusted cyber spine, slammed his tray down. "Where is my extra dip?" Before the situation could spiral into plasma bolts and howling chaos, Mia Tran calmly approached, armed with a calm smile and the corporate-issued Crisis Burrito coupon booklet. "Sir," she said, "we understand your frustration. I conquered moons, and now you've conquered the combo number 7. That's growth." The warlord blinked. I suppose that's true." She handed him 2 extra sauces and a coupon for a free dessert on his next visit. Diplomacy, human style. Meanwhile, deep within the employee lounge of Earth HQ, Keon Davis, Rosa Castillo, and Jojo Shift Lead Supreme reviewed the next big challenge. A new alliance of alien elites had formed, the Coalition of Purity. Their goal? To resist human economic dominance. They're threatening to ban Earth-based businesses, Keon explained, claiming we're culturally contaminating their worlds. Jojo popped her gum. So, let 'em. Rosa didn't flinch. Then we offer a limited-time exclusive deal, a cultural preservation menu. Same food, but give everything fancy names. Sell nostalgia back to them, with fries. Brilliant, Keon muttered. We're not just changing economies. We're rewriting identity, Rosa said. And outside their office, another store opened. 1,000 more would follow. One combo at a time, humanity was winning. And the galaxy? It was learning how to serve. In the heart of Zalrun Prime, once the opulent capital of the galaxy's most feared slaver species, a crowd stretched around 5 city blocks. They weren't protesting. They were waiting to apply at the grand opening of the planet's first Galacto grill. A neon sign flashed above the entrance. We don't just feed worlds. We redefine them. The irony wasn't lost on Vrelg, former Minister of Labor Enforcement, now wearing a paper visor and a name badge that read, "Welcome, Trainee Vrelg." He adjusted his apron with the delicacy of a diplomat handling a peace treaty. "This is humiliating," he hissed to his fellow line cook, a retired general of the Crexian Armada. "This pays better than Galactic reconstruction," the general replied, "and we get free meal breaks. Do you remember meal breaks? Because my previous job involved ration paste and open airlocks." Vrelg sighed. "Do you think the humans knew this would happen?" The general looked at the crowd, at the soaring banner that read, "Proudly employee-owned," at the former slavers lining up with job applications in claw, tentacle, or root. "Yes, I think they planned this down to the pickle." Back on Earth, inside the Chrome Dome, the skyscraper-tall HQ of humanity's global franchise union, CEO Rosa Castillo sat with a delegation of politicians from the Interstellar Trade Accord. Their mood, tense, suspicious, desperate. "We believe Earth has overstepped," snapped High Chancellor Drool. "You've monopolized half the quadrant's food trade. Your cultural exports are infecting planetary educational systems, and your species now owns 43% of all service sector jobs." Rosa sipped her tea calmly. "You're welcome." "This isn't diplomacy," barked another delegate. "This is soft conquest. We offered terms. You sent warships. Now your heirs flip patties and fold napkins with precision. Tell me, which was more effective?" There was a pause. "The napkin thing is oddly calming," one admitted. Rosa smiled. "Good. Now let's talk about your licensing backlog." At Franchise Outpost 9Z-Orion Belt, a group of new recruits underwent Earth's infamous cultural sensitivity training. "Repeat after me," said the human instructor, a patient middle-aged woman named Loretta, who wore cat-eye glasses and wielded a digital clipboard like a holy relic. "The customer is not always right, but they are always loud," the aliens chorused, "and when in doubt, offer them a complimentary upgrade and a coupon for emotional damages." "Excellent," the class clapped. One particularly enthusiastic insectoid shouted, "I am ready to greet with warmth." "You'll go far, Zexk," Loretta beamed. Across the stars, planetary economists scrambled to explain the rise of Earth's unexpected dominance. On a news broadcast, alien commentator Tix Verloff gestured wildly at a financial chart that resembled a tidal wave smashing through an anthill. This is not normal. They were slaves. They had no interstellar fleet, no central bank. But now their currency is backed by demand for processed cheese. His co-anchor, a human named Dakota, smiled serenely. "And yet, here we are. Live from the Moon Mall's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Back to you, Tix." At a memorial on Titan, a bronze sculpture stood tall, a human worker in uniform, smiling as they handed a wrapped meal to a child of a former oppressor species. The inscription read, "Service is not submission. Dignity cannot be broken, only delayed." A group of galactic historians stood quietly before it, all once proud recorders of the old empires. "History," whispered Professor Yell, "has never tasted this salty." Meanwhile, Jojo, now promoted to planetary regional commander of snacks and conflict mediation, stared out the window of her interstellar shuttle. She was on her way to negotiate a labor dispute on Corith, where former elite nobles were protesting their wages. "They want hazard pay," her assistant muttered. "For what?" "For cleaning fryer oil." Jojo blew a bubble. "Tell them if they survive their first Friday rush hour, we'll talk." The assistant gulped. "You mean, with teenagers?" Jojo smirked. "With coupons." Inside a secretive High Council chamber on Zalmaris, remaining members of the Old Order gathered to discuss how to reclaim their influence. One leaned forward. "We must fight fire with fire." "You mean open a rival chain?" "No," he said grimly. "We infiltrate." The others stared. "Yes, we apply for jobs, work from the inside, sabotage the source, undermine their culture." It was bold. It was desperate. It was unnecessary, said a voice from the doorway. A human stood there, Rosa Castillo herself. She smiled politely. "I've brought your uniforms. You start tomorrow. Orientation begins at 800 hours. Don't be late. We're rolling out interstellar milkshakes." And with that, the last gasp of resistance became tomorrow's fry cook orientation. There's something oddly sacred about the hiss of a burger press. In the sprawling food court of Earth's orbital mall Prime, once the Galactic stock exchange of slave auctions, a new ritual unfolded daily. Aliens who once placed chains on human wrists now stood with hairnets and spatulas, flipping patties with grim reverence. "Medium rare for Section C," someone called. "Don't forget the vegan slimes for the Uth delegation," shouted a Trelkin. Jojo leaned back in her corner booth, sipping her iced latte and watching her legacy. "You know," she said to her assistant, who sat across from her with a datapad, "when I was a janitor scrubbing plasma off walls, I never imagined I'd one day unionize the people who enslaved my species." "They said the Crexian delegation cried during lunch service," her assistant replied. "Apparently the seasoning reminded them of their childhood." Jojo laughed. "Food hits harder than revenge, and tastes better too." Meanwhile, at the Interstellar Franchise Summit, Earth's booth was, as usual, the most crowded. Delegates from over 200 species milled around, sampling samples of fries engineered to be addictive to over 47 biologies, sipping zero-grav smoothies, and negotiating franchise rights like they were trading precious metals. An Arxan warlord held up a plastic tray. "This burrito. I need the license. For the entire southern cluster." Rosa Castillo raised a brow. "We'll need to see your labor reform guarantees first." "My people don't even have labor laws." "Then it's a good time to start." She handed him a napkin. On it was a QR code and the phrase, "Equal pay, equal fries." Across the galaxy, a former slave auction block had been transformed into a themed dining experience. They called it the Empathy Diner. Each table had plaques engraved with stories of humans once sold there. Customers ordered meals while learning what life had once been like under the heel of their ancestors. A Zarnish family sat silently, reading the story of a child named Marcus, who had escaped, survived, and later returned as the manager of this very location. "I didn't know," whispered the Zarnish child. "Now you do," her father said, "and we'll never forget." At the exit, a human host handed them complimentary dessert coupons. On Earth, deep within the spire of commerce, economists reviewed the data. Humanity now controlled 63% of galactic fast-service commerce. Their credit rating was the highest in recorded history, and universal job satisfaction had increased since the former slavers began working in customer service. "Is it psychological warfare?" one alien analyst whispered. "Is this revenge disguised as capitalism?" A human intern in the room raised his hand. "Number, it's just really good management." In a classroom on a neutral moon, children from 17 species sat in a circle. Today's lesson was called "The Day the Fry Cooks Freed the Stars." The human teacher held up a holobook and pressed play. A 3D image of Jojo, Rosa, and a smiling ex-slaver-turned-employee floated above them. Long ago, humans were enslaved, but they didn't just fight back with weapons. They fought back with work. One furry child raised their paw. How? They built systems. They offered opportunity. They gave dignity, even to those who once took theirs away. A reptilian child blinked. Why didn't they just blow everyone up? The teacher smiled. Because humans knew that building something stronger is the best revenge of all. In the employee lounge of Galacto Grill, Andromeda Sector, a new recruit sat nervously with his burger hat askew. He had once been a warlord. Now, he was being trained on how to refill soda machines and greet guests with a smile that doesn't terrify children. Jojo walked in, her badge now reading CEO, Galactic Ops. You, she pointed, have great posture. You'll work drive-thru. He nodded solemnly. I will not fail. I know, she grinned, because humans never did. In a quiet memorial garden on Mars, beneath a statue of a human holding a tray in one hand and a broken chain in the other, the words carved in stone read, "They took everything from us, so we built everything back. Better, tastier, ours." A single flower lay at its base, left there by a small alien child in a Galacto Grill uniform.